for me. Vote for PAP.
We need to get our policies right. We really can do better than this.
No more broken promises.
Desmond Lim is back. Dedicated and determined to serve you to make a better Punggol.
The rallying call and the lofty rhetoric setting the stage for 9 days of campaigning. 4 candidates gunning for a single-member constituency. Political pundits have said that the by-election can be viewed as an indicator of the party's performance since the last general election. And while it's a local contest, it's really hard to separate municipal concerns from national ones in this by-election. Who among the 4 contenders can convince voters that they have what it takes to lead on the ground and in Parliament? It was the only ward to see a 3-way race in the 2011 general election. 20 months on, Punggol East now faces a 4-party contest. In fact, it almost became a 5-cornered fight up until the eve of nomination day, when the Singapore Democratic Party decided to pull out. On nomination day itself, there were no surprises. The ruling party, the People's Action Party, fielded a new politician, 40-year-old colorectal surgeon Dr. Koh Poh Kun. The Reform Party's Kenneth Jayaratnam, who ran in West Coast GRC in the last general election, put himself forward. And back to contest the seat, 34-year-old Lee Lian, who polled 41% of the votes for the Workers' Party in the last election. And Desmond Lim, who garnered 4.5% under the Singapore Democratic Alliance, or SDA, banner. Dr. Koh Poh Kun wasted no time. Even before nomination day, he was pounding the pavement, trying to make himself known to as many residents as possible.
My job as a doctor has allowed me to really be connecting to strangers that walk into my clinic. I think within 5 minutes we establish a rapport. They put their life in my hands to operate for them. So I think building up rapport with people, getting their trust, is something that comes naturally to me because of my training and my profession.
While party leaders made it clear he had their support, Dr. Koh was also eager to show that he was the man in charge. And as the man in charge, he was the go-to guy should residents need help. The father of 2 said he would push for more childcare centres and community clubs in Punggol East if elected. Calling himself a son of Punggol, Dr. Koh, who spent his early childhood in a farmhouse there, also took pains to stress his humble roots.
I know what it is like when all we could afford for a meal for a family of 7 was a single kuning fish and some porridge. My mom would strip the fish bare of all the flesh, mash it up, mix it in the porridge, flavor it with some soy sauce, and that's all we get for a meal.
Party leaders threw their support behind him, calling him a man with character, conviction and the commitment. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong even went as far as to hint of greater responsibilities for Dr. Koh if he's elected.
I think he can make a contribution not just in Punggol East but more broadly. And I think when he is ready, and when I judge that he is ready and we are ready, I will be appointing him to a suitable political office.
His opponent in the ward, whom some see as most likely to give Dr. Koh a run for his money, is 34-year-old financial trainer Lee Lian of the Workers' Party. Not to be outdone, she also spoke of her humble background and familiarity with residents.
I'm not a high flyer or a government scholar. I did not do very well earlier in my schooling years. But I worked hard, really hard, and made it to Ngee Polytechnic and eventually graduated from Curtin University of Australia.
Miss Lee who's married with no children is banking on the sociable nature to win votes.
I still believe in personal touch, face-to-face, because, people who know me always say that I'm a people person. So I really hope that, I can reach out to as many residents as I can so that they can also feel me.
Vote for me, Desmond Lim, dedicated local, determined leader.
Residents and voters of Punggol East, I am Desmond Lim, dedicated local, determined leader. I may not have won the last general election, but I am still here talking to you, reaching out to you because I believe in the cause.
Determined to give it another shot, SDA leader Desmond Lim has decided to contest this by-election. He had in the last general election proposed a 5-year plan to build a satay club and more childcare centres in Punggol East. But that failed to win him enough support, costing him instead his election deposit of $16,000. This time round, he wants to revive his plan for Punggol East, but has taken his rallies online, the only candidate to do so.
Only if you have... My proposition to do an online rally is simple. It will save a small party like SDA costs, which will translate to a better deployment of resources to work within our perimeters. You can say that this departure of the normal rally style in elections signifies the SDA confidence in not being intimidated to follow the norm, rather to make calculated decisions that set us apart and gets the job done.
The Reform Party also unveiled its 5-year plan for the ward, proposing to set up at least one childcare centre in every precinct and daycare centres for the elderly. Candidate Kenneth Jayaratnam also pledged to donate 10% of his salary to the ward's community projects and to move into the constituency if elected. Building his campaign around the slogan, "No more broken promises," he criticised both the ruling party and the Workers' Party.
You, the residents of Punggol, have been let down by the PAP as many times as your boundaries have changed. In 2011, 2 heavyweight brands came here and they both made promises. One promised millions of dollars for projects, bus stops, a new community centre. The other candidate promised you hard work and shared resources, then went missing in action. And Punggol East seems to have fallen through the cracks. You don't deserve that.
And there was some drama during the campaign. Up until 2 hours before this rally, it was unclear if it would go ahead. Mr. Jayaratnam said he had received anonymous online threats against him and his family that promised to harm them if he didn't pull out of the race. The threats allegedly started on nomination day. Before candidates filed their papers, there were calls for the other opposition parties to stay out of the race so as to give the Workers' Party a greater chance of winning. But the decision by the Reform Party and Singapore Democratic Alliance to contest raised doubts about unity within the opposition ranks and whether they can work effectively under one umbrella. Reform Party candidate Kenneth Jayaratnam says opposition unity in Singapore is a far-fetched notion. This was in response to remarks by Workers' Party chief Lau Tia Kiang that it was not workable for all opposition parties to come together.
We believe in competition as ideologies, and that's what we're seeing: competition as message, competition as quality as candidates, which we feel we're winning on.
After nomination day, the candidates took their campaigns into higher gear. As political campaigning entered its final stretch, the sound and fury of the past 9 days moved up a notch. The Punggol East by-election is Singapore's second by-election in 8 months and the third election in fewer than 2 years. Yet, the crowds showed no signs of election fatigue. The outcome of the by-election will be of little consequence to the overall balance of power in Parliament. The ruling party now occupies 81 of the 87 seats in Parliament. But the result will be seen by some as a barometer of how the People's Action Party has performed since the general election. A dipstick poll to see if Singaporeans have appreciated its efforts to ease public concerns over high property prices, infrastructure shortcomings, and a widening income gap, and even to consult and communicate better with the public. At its first rally, PAP leaders outlined the programs introduced in the past 2 years. These include measures to increase the supply of public housing, cool the property market, and help the lower income cope with cost of living issues.
You will see that since the last general election, we have made many moves on housing. We have been working on transport, and that's because as a party, we listen, we do. It's not easy to do some of the things we have to do, and sometimes it takes time. But we have not misread and we have not forgotten the message that the electorate has given.
We are addressing immediate concerns as well as longer-term issues. We are carrying out all these programs which we had promised to do during the last general election. And we will continue to do so, to make progress for you, to make progress for Singapore.
Opposition parties were quick to exploit perceived government failings. Transport and housing policies especially came under fire.
Last night, DPM Teo Chee Hian said that after GE 2011, the government had taken the initiative and moved ahead on some issues. Are you satisfied with their progress so far? There is still a lot to be done to make life better in Singapore. Public transport, public housing, care for the elderly, low-income workers. All these still need attention. Do you want the government to work harder to fix these problems?
It is time you ask yourself whether the PAP appreciates your support, or do you want to send a message to the PAP government that you don't want your support to be taken for granted anymore? Elections are the best way to safeguard your rights and interests and to make the government work for you. After the last election, the PAP has obviously worked harder. Let us make sure that after this by-election and the next general election, they will work as if their lives depended on you.
Education Minister Heng Swee Keat stressed to voters that the by-election is about electing the right candidate who can best serve Punggol East residents and not about voting more opposition into Parliament. He rejected the Workers' Party's call to do so as to make the government work harder.
Maybe that's the basis on which the Workers' Party operates and the basis on which it is motivated. If that is the case, I think voters should look at what the various MPs have done, and what they have contributed in their constituencies and in Parliament. And I think they will come to the conclusion that they should vote for the PAP to make the Workers' Party work harder for you.
And they have proven the PAP wrong.
At some of the rallies, the opposition tried to make capital out of the fact that it does not run the government. Workers' Party chief Lau Tia Kiang urged voters to vote for the opposition, citing the by-election effect.
行动党已经是政府，它已经是政府，在国会里面，它拥有绝大多数的议员，在87个议席里面，超过90%的议席。 全由行动党包办，行动党已经是一个很强的政党，你有需要让它更强吗？
This was also an argument used by SDA leader Desmond Lim, who asked that voters choose a non-Workers' Party candidate so as to have more opposition voices in Parliament. Mr. Kenneth Ajayaratnam positioned himself as the most qualified to hold the government to account on national issues. The PAP's response was that voters should vote for what they believe in and support.
You have to vote not tactically to calculate which way you gain advantage, but really sincerely to judge what do you support, what do you believe in, and if you believe in that, support that. If you say, I like the PAP's program, but it's already there, let me vote against it, because then I get two people to look after me, I think it's you really can't answer to what you really believe and trust. And if everybody does that, I think we have a problem.
As polling day nears, the PAP is counting on the voters of Punggol East to vote for its candidate based on the government's performance as well as its ability to deliver on its promises.
When I get into Parliament,
History has shown
Hardest to represent you.
I will do all
The
I can.
rallies continued, fast and furious.
Alternative perlu house to house.
that you like Singapore.
On day 6 of the campaign, Workers' Party fired a salvo at the government for not doing more for the elderly.
Our seniors who are 75 and above should be allowed to use their MediSave for medical treatment without any restriction.
In his response, Health Minister Gan Kim Yong said that various schemes are already in place and more will be done to help elderly Singaporeans. And that includes schemes like MediFund, MediSave top-ups and Community Health Scheme to help senior citizens and needy Singaporeans pay for their medical care. But he cautioned that an unrestricted use of their MediSave is not the solution to their long-term needs.
We have to be very careful when we want to remove a restriction on the use of MediSave, especially if we want to remove all the restrictions, because we have to be mindful that these are very important savings of the elderly, and they will continue to need the savings as they grow older.
At another rally, the Workers' Party rebutted comments by Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong that the Workers' Party does not have alternative policies and strong views.
PNV remarked that the Workers' Party does not have strong views. Perhaps he has not been paying attention to what Workers' Party has been raising. Is this because we have only 6 MPs in Parliament and their voice is not loud enough? Actually, bringing up issue in Parliament is one thing, but whether the government is prepared to listen and to modify its policy is another.
The ruling party, however, pressed the opposition for concrete proposals for voters. And they did this not just through block visits and rallies. In his Facebook posting, Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean questioned if the Workers' Party MPs have offered credible alternatives on the best way forward. The WP MPs, he says, have avoided taking a stand on major issues in Parliament, such as population growth and foreign workers, and where tough trade-offs are needed. He remarked that if they've not made a stand, then having another MP from the party will not help the quality of debate and decision-making for Singapore. Mr. Teo in turn called on Punggol East voters to ask which candidate has the best plans and can serve them best.
See who can actually do the work and serve them here in Punggol East. That he will work hard for the residents here and make Punggol East a better place for them. I also would like to see ourselves continue to work with Pokun here in Punggol East as one big Pasir Ris family.
Newly appointed Speaker of Parliament, Madam Halimah Yaakob, also expressed confidence in the ability of the PAP candidate to make a difference in the lives of Singaporeans.
I'm really confident that if once Pokun is elected as a member of parliament, he will pursue those issues with rigor and with great passion, because he is a man that believes strongly in those issues, whether it is the elderly, whether it is the poor, whether it is the families and children. Most certainly, I am certain that he will have the passion to push those issues.
After 9 days of campaigning, voters of Punggol East will soon have their say at the ballot box. And their decision will not only influence how Punggol East will look like a few years from now, it will be used to gauge voter support for the programs and initiatives of the government. It will also be a measure of the Workers' Party performance since the general election.
You want democracy? Then why restrict the voices in Parliament to 2? Where is the system of checks and balances with 2 dominant parties in actions?
I will not promise millions of dollars, but I have managed hundreds of millions of dollars. And I can assure you that I am a safe pair of hands. I will not promise you pie-in-the-sky plans, but offer well-researched and practical and feasible projects.
My fellow Singaporeans, this is what the Workers' Party will do for you. Together with you, we will push hard on issues that matter to you until we see policy changes that will serve you better.
I know the Singapore story can continue. And it can become even better for our children. I want to recreate the ingredients that our children can use to write the most exciting chapter in this Singapore story. Regardless of their race, language, or religion. Regardless of their financial and family background. I want to believe that when we put our hard work together and give it our best shot, we will leave behind a legacy for our children that is far better than the one our forefathers left for us.
After all the sound and fury of the last 9 days, Singapore heads into cooling-off day on Friday. Voters of Punggol East have heard the plans and policies of the parties and candidates. Now is the time to reflect on what's been said, to separate rhetoric from substance, and what this election means to them. However local the by-election may be, it will still impact the rest of Singapore. It will send a signal not only to the government, but also to the opposition on what type of opposition Singaporeans want or are comfortable with. Only the 32,000 residents of the Punggol East will be casting their ballots come January 26. But the rest of Singapore is expected to watch this outcome very closely.